Welcome, my friends! Today I'm going to be giving an overview of a few different types of graphical representations of data, including bar graphs, circle graphs, and time series graphs. First, we have bar graphs, which are used to display quantitative or qualitative data. The base axis of a bar graph, typically the horizontal axis, will usually display the different possible values of a qualitative variable. An example might be a bar graph for the qualitative variable of hair color for students in a class. The horizontal axis is the qualitative variable, hair color, and the vertical axis is the frequency, the number of students who have the indicated hair color. Oftentimes you will see the vertical axis represented as a percentage instead of a frequency, which would look something like this. The shape is the same, but now we have percentage, sometimes called relative frequency, instead of frequency on the vertical axis. Sometimes, instead of frequencies or percentages for the vertical axis, you will see a quantitative variable that has been recorded for each possible level of the qualitative variable. An example might be student approval rating of professors at 4 different schools on a scale of 1 to 10. The qualitative variable of school is displayed on the horizontal axis, and the quantitative variable of student approval rating is displayed on the vertical axis. Sometimes you can have a quantitative variable on the base axis, but if that's the case, it will have what I like to think of as a qualitative nature, meaning it's really acting like a qualitative variable. An example might be a bar graph displaying the inflation-adjusted median household income in each decade. Yes, the horizontal axis is technically quantitative, but the years here are acting as separate categories in a similar way that a qualitative variable, like hair color, might be used. Remember that a histogram displays a quantitative variable on the horizontal axis with frequency on the vertical axis. So if you are interested in visualizing the distribution of a quantitative variable, you probably need a histogram, not a bar graph. Unlike a histogram, the bars in a bar graph typically will not be touching each other to represent the separate nature of the different categories. If a bar graph that represents frequency is arranged in descending order from largest to smallest, we call that bar graph a Pareto chart. Pareto charts are useful when we would like to highlight the most common observations, such as voting for something like class president. Sometimes you will see bar charts with several bars for each level on the base axis. We call these types of charts clustered bar graphs. Here we can see the number of car sales for 3 sales reps in the first quarter of the year in a clustered bar graph. Sometimes you will see this symbol on a bar chart, which indicates a changing scale. This means that some portion of the graph is not shown. Here we can see how the use of the changing scale symbol can create a misleading graphic. If you look at the graph on the left with the changing scale, the other category bar looks dramatically smaller than the bars for cats or dogs. The other bar is less than half of the height of the bar of the cats or dogs, but the actual number, 27%, is more than half of 36% or 37%. You should focus more on the numbers than the bars in any graph with a changing scale, due to the misleading effect it can have on the graph. The graph on the right shows the same bar graph without the changing scale, in which the bars more accurately reflect the numbers that they are representing. Another common type of graph is what we call the circle graph, or pie chart, which is typically used to show percentages or counts for a qualitative variable. Here's an example of preferred music genre for 223 randomly selected individuals. It's important to note that if percentages are used, the number should add up to 100%. If there are too many categories, it can be difficult to read a circle graph, and some textbooks recommend not to use a circle graph if you have more than 12 different categories. Finally, we have time series graphs, which plot the value of a quantitative variable over time. Here we have an example that plots income data of a grocery store for each month of the year. The horizontal axis represents our unit of time, in this case months, and the vertical axis represents the quantitative variable, in this case net income. It is standard to record the data at regular, repeated intervals, such as every day, every week, every month, or every year. For any graph that you make sure that you include a title, axes titles, and an indication of units where applicable. There are, of course, many more graphical representations of data, including scatterplots, dot plots, stem and leaf displays, histograms, box and whisker plots, as well as plenty of others, many of which I have covered in other videos. This video simply focused on some of the most common ways you might see data graphically displayed. Alright my friends, that wraps up our discussion of bar charts, circle graphs, and time series graphs. We will be exploring many more fun and exciting statistical topics that you won't want to miss, so make sure to check out our other videos.